President Biden in the Roosevelt Room there with Justice Breyer, and dare I say, refreshing words from the retiring justice in a country that has been so dominated by divisive politics in these times. He talked about our complicated country, but he also talked about what his mother told him as a child, that there was every race, every religion, and he said his mother would add every point of view possible. He said in his own words there, it's a kind of miracle, this country. And when he talks to students of all ages across this country, even the ones in law school, he mentioned, who become cynical, he said he challenged them on that point and said this is all still an experiment, and he believes, as he said, that he's an optimist and that this experiment will work. And he says it's up to his children, his grandchildren, the next generation to determine if that's indeed the case. President Biden making news there by making it official, in his own words, that he will begin this process of trying to choose who comes next, who will fill Justice Breyer's seat on the court. He said that person will be worthy of that seat, of that legacy, a deep, extraordinary quality and experience that person would bring to the court. And then, of course, he added this will be the first black woman he will name to the U.S. Supreme Court. This was a campaign promise he made. Cecilia mentioned it earlier. He made it during a primary debate just before the South Carolina primary, and he said here today that he will keep that promise in his choice for the court. Before we move on to the future and how quickly this could move, I want to bring in Terry Moran, who has covered the Supreme Court for years. And Terry, that was trademark Justice Breyer right there. He has long talked about the apolitical nature of the court, his respect for his fellow justices, regardless of their viewpoints. And he had words of optimism for a country that is truly challenged.
He sure did, David. And what you saw is what we got from Stephen Breyer on the Supreme Court for all these years. A warm, voluble, optimistic personality, a welcoming and tolerant mind. And imagine being his colleague. Imagine, wrestling over very difficult issues with a personality and a rigorous mind like that. Sure, there were clashes, but he was a leader, as he was on the Supreme Court, behind the scenes more than in the cases almost, who sought consensus, who never really held grudges, who wrote in a milder way than some of the other more famous judges, who was always looking for compromise in the center to get it right, as the president said, for the American people. And in that way, just as Joe Biden in his way does, represents a bygone era, as Biden himself acknowledged, when leaders of our institutions across the country were that kind of person, looking for common ground, looking for what can be done and how it might be done. And we're in a very different era now. But what you just saw was just vintage Stephen Breyer, both on the bench and, more important, behind the scenes. That's really where his legacy lies. The court during his years went from a slightly dysfunctional court, a lot of people at each other's throats on the old court, to something that was very collegial over the years, and he was a big part of that.
Yeah, he was a consensus builder. That is his reputation, Terry. Thank you. I wanted to put up on the screen a sort of a before and after. So many years ago, served nearly 28 years on the Supreme Court. This was with then Senator Biden. And, of course, in the Roosevelt Room just moments ago with President Biden all of these years later. And the president saying that he has patiently sought common ground, built consensus. The president saying today that he believes Justice Breyer is a model public servant in a time of great division in this country. He said the choice for the Supreme Court that he will make will uphold those values. And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, because, Cecilia, we already know that because this promise had been made on the campaign trail, he says today publicly before the American people he will keep it, that there is a short list in place.
Yeah, there's a short list, David, and we should be clear, this isn't a list that the White House has made public as the Trump White House had done with their list of potential Supreme Court nominees, but this is the short list as we know it at this point. And let me just give you a quick run through of some of these names here. At the top of this list right now, it's Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is on the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. She's a Harvard Law grad. She clerked for Justice Breyer. Interestingly enough, she's also a former public defender. She's a mama, too. She was on former President Obama's shortlist in 2016 as well. There's Leandra Kruger, on the California Supreme Court. She clerked for John Paul Stevens. She went to Yale Law. She's one of the youngest people ever to be nominated to the California Supreme Court. She's also a mom of two. You also have there Leslie Abrams Gardner. She's on the U.S. District Court in Georgia. Interestingly, she is the sister of a well-known name, you know, Stacey Abrams. And J. Michelle Childs, she's on the U.S. District Court in South Carolina. She's a mama, too. And she went to the University of South Carolina Law. And I point that out because, David, many of President Biden's supporters, including his good friend Jim Clyburn in Congress, have urged him to look beyond some of these traditional picks, these Ivy League schools, to kind of branch out. But make no mistake, David, President Biden is keenly aware, you heard him say this today, of the historic nature of this appointment that he will be nominated. He says he hasn't made a decision yet, but he is looking for extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, integrity, and that this will be a black woman making good on this campaign promise from there in South Carolina during the primary.
And as you've just pointed out, Cecilia, no shortage of experience, deep experience. And of course, this is just the short list that's been made public by reporters who've looked into the history of judges who could be on somewhat of a fast track given the president's promise. But as Cecilia noted, this is not the official list in any way given by the White House. So there's always room for a little bit of surprise, though we do know the nomination, the pick will be historic nature. That is the one thing we do know about this. Let's bring in Rachel Scott. She's live up on the Hill at this hour. And Rachel, you always help to remind the audience how quickly this could move and what the stakes are as far as the numbers, what the president will need in terms of votes in order to get his pick through.
Yes, David, a simple majority vote. That is what Democrats will need, 51 votes in order to push through President Biden's Supreme Court nominee. Now, that threshold actually used to be 60 votes. It was lowered to 51 by Republicans back in 2017. It gives Democrats the upper hand. They have majority in the Senate, and they are running with it. In fact, I'm told Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee will be meeting later this afternoon to chart the pathway forward, and they are looking at a very quick timeline. On average, it takes about 2 months, 68 days for a Supreme Court nominee to be confirmed by the Senate. Justice Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed at a record 27 days, just days actually before the November 2020 election. And that is the timeline that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is eyeing for when President Biden names his pick. David?
Quick one more question for you there, Rachel, because this is always such an historic and fascinating process to watch it unfold. No one's ruling out the potential for at least some Republican votes for a nominee. They're not saying that will happen, but they're hoping for the possibility. The question I'm going to ask you is something I've asked you over the course of many weeks on other key votes, and that is whether or not the president can count on all of the Democrats to be on his side on this one. I gather that is the case, but no one can assume that given what we've seen in recent weeks with Senators Manchin and Sinema on other key issues. Of course, this is much more monumental, much more historic in nature. So can he count on all Democratic senators and, of course, the tie-breaking vote from the vice president?
Right, David, and that will be key to pass this on a party line vote to get this justice actually confirmed. And Democrats do actually have a pretty good record of supporting President Biden's judicial nominees here in the Senate. But you heard from the president today, he will be seeking the counsel of both Democrats and Republicans. And in fact, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, has already reached out to Republicans on this. It's a sign that they want to get a bipartisan vote on this pick.
We will see what happens in the coming weeks. We heard the president there say he'll reveal his choice in February. Rachel Scott, Cecilia Vega, Terry Moran, our thanks to all three of you. Our coverage is going to continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and of course, I'll be back with the entire team a little later today for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir. I hope to see you then. Until then, have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.